The rise of Dana White and how he transformed the UFC into a global phenomenon. Get ready to step into the ring, because we're about to take a deep dive into the world of UFC and the impeccable man who made it all happen. Dana White. This is the story of how one man's vision and determination changed the game forever. White's journey from underground brawls to mainstream success has been anything but conventional. He's a straight-talking, no-nonsense kind of guy who's not afraid to ruffle feathers and make enemies. He's one of the most influential figures in combat sports history. In this video, we'll explore the rise of Dana White and how he transformed the UFC into a global phenomenon that's taking the world by storm. So put on your gloves and get ready to go toe-to-toe with the man behind the mayhem. Gone are the days when fighting only meant boxing. The UFC transformed a once-shunned combat sport, formerly known as No Holds Barred, into a global cultural phenomenon and a major commercial powerhouse. Behind the glittering facade of UFC success lies the unsung hero Dana White. He is the tenacious and bold visionary who tapped into the world's secret bloodlust and turned it into a massive force to be reckoned with. Helio Gracie and his family brought their unique form of jiu-jitsu to the US in the late 1970s. Art Davie, an advertising executive, teamed up with the Gracies to create the Ultimate Fighting Championship, or UFC.
So we start talking about how can we make this thing on a large scale. He said, "Honey, if we got to go large scale, we got to go television."
The UFC once was a no-holds-barred tournament featuring fighters of different styles and sizes, where the only rule was to win by any means necessary. In 1996, Senator John McCain led a crusade to ban the UFC in all 50 states, equating it to human cockfighting.
McCain came out and said, you can't put on these unregulated fights.
There was no referee, there was nothing. It was terrible.
The UFC responded to the legal backlash by modifying its rules to comply with state athletic commissions, introducing weight classes, and banning certain moves like fish hooking, hair pulling, and eye gouging. The UFC struggled to gain commercial success, but a relentless champion emerged to take the sport to new heights. He refused to back down or give up, pushing the boundaries of what was deemed acceptable and propelling the sport into the mainstream. Dana White was a scrappy street fighter, unafraid of taking on anyone who dared to cross him in life and, more importantly, in business. White's true calling came when he met the Fertitta brothers at a young age, who shared his love of combat sports and had a vision for transforming the struggling UFC into a global phenomenon. Together, they embarked on a journey that would test their mentals and push the limits of what was possible with White at the helm. The UFC became a cultural epicenter, a beacon of power and prestige in a world of chaos and uncertainty. Its light was fueled by a burning desire to make his mark in the gritty world of fighting, and eventually started his own business out in his basement. As his reputation grew, he rented out local gyms to teach his craft and build a name for himself in the Boston scene. But success came at a price. One brutal night, White was involved in a large fight amongst a gang of vicious thugs, leaving him with permanent hearing loss and many ears disease.
What happened was when I was 21 years old, I lived in Boston, and I got jumped one night at this bar. And these dudes beat the living shit out of me for about a good 20 minutes.
Though he soldiered on, his troubles were far from over. As his business continued to thrive, he caught the attention of the infamous Winter Hill gang leader, James Whitey Bulger. Bulger disrupted one of White's boxing classes, demanding a hefty sum of cash.
And one day I was teaching, and two guys showed up and said I owed them $2,500. For what? $2,500. I was 21 years old. You might as well ask me for $25,000. Right. I didn't have $2,500.
White brushed them off, but when Bulger's right-hand man, Kevin Weeks, issued a chilling ultimatum, White knew he had to act fast. Fearing for his life, he hastily picked up his bags and bought a one-way ticket to Las Vegas, leaving behind everything he had worked so hard for. Even with the glitz and glamour of Sin City, he couldn't shake the feeling that danger was never far away. The fight of his life had only just begun. Do you recall that Fertitta guy we mentioned earlier? Lorenzo and his brother Frank were prominent casino owners in Vegas, and they coincidentally encountered White again in Sin City. The brothers were impressed with White's abilities, and they began training together. White became captivated with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and began mingling with legends like Chuck the Iceman Liddell and Tito the Huntington Beach bad boy Ortiz. He became their manager and gained extensive knowledge about the UFC, making some startling discoveries. White found out that the UFC was going bankrupt, so he informed the Fertitta brothers, who immediately bought the company for $2 million. White earned a 10% share and was also named the company's president.
I found out that the UFC was in trouble. They were going bankrupt. So when I saw this opportunity, and I thought that this thing might be for sale, so I called the brothers. They were in Miami, and I said, I think this thing's in trouble. I think we could buy the UFC.
The UFC was in disarray, but White and the Fertitta brothers were committed to transforming the company and establishing an empire. They faced countless challenges, from a lack of respect to legal and regulatory hurdles that come with the brutal violence associated with the sport. However, they were prepared to fight their way to the top, to give the sport mainstream appeal and turn this business profitable.
I called Dana and I said, look, we're going to have to take a loss on this thing. And I don't know why, but I got up the next morning and I just said to myself, I'm not ready to tap out. I'm not ready to give in.
The Fertitta brothers invested another $40 million in the UFC in 2004 and created The Ultimate Fighter, a reality TV show featuring two teams of scrappy fighters duking it out for a six-figure contract. Dana White was at the helm of the show, which featured fighters living together, training together, and ultimately fighting each other. Getting the show on the air wasn't easy until Spike TV stepped in. Networks were hesitant to take a chance on a sport that was still considered too violent and unrefined. The Ultimate Fighter was an instant hit on Spike TV, with over 1 million viewers tuning in for the first episode alone. It was the raw energy and charisma of Dana White, who had dedicated his life to making the UFC a household name, that kept viewers coming back for more. Spike TV's young male audience and willingness to take risks made the show an instant hit, with over 1 million viewers tuning in for the first episode alone. The first season concluded with a battle between Forrest Griffin and Stefan Bonner, which is still regarded as one of the greatest fights of all time. It was a complete bloodbath that ended with both fighters getting a UFC contract.
Everybody's in the octagon. Dana walks over, he goes, hey, that was a close fight. What do you think? Should we give both guys a contract? I go, whatever you want to do, man, let's do it.
We ended up giving both guys a UFC contract that night, which made the place even go crazier.
It was a pivotal moment for the UFC, as it proved that there was an audience for this sport and that it could be profitable. Spike TV and the UFC agreed to renew the show for a second season, sealing the deal on a napkin. And the rest, as they say, is history.
If that first season didn't happen, I would not be sitting here right now.
The Ultimate Fighter has become a cultural behemoth, launching the careers of countless fighters and cementing the UFC's place in the world of sports. It was created by the Fertitta brothers, Dana White, and the fighters who stepped into the octagon. The reality show led the UFC to mainstream success, and with the acquisition of other fighting promotions, the UFC became the premier promotion in the sport. Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, Anderson Silva, and Francis Ngannou are all part of this. This paid off in a big way, as the UFC reached a $100 million deal with Fox Sports in 2011 and turned into a global phenomenon. Two more major deals would take place, the sale in 2006 to WME-IMG for $4 billion, the most expensive sale of a sport organization ever. The Fertitta brothers handed what was once a dead $2 million idea into the entertainment talent represented by Hollywood agents Ari Emanuel and Patrick Whitesell. Then in 2018, the UFC and ESPN inked a 7-year deal worth more than $1.5 billion. This deal would eventually include pay-per-view broadcast rights, with experts estimating the promotional deal could be growing to $3 billion for the new multi-year deal in 2024.
Our Fox deal is up, and we're probably not going to end up doing another deal with Fox. John Skipper's never, ever going to take the UFC. So we're in a real tough place.
Here's a shocker. New details revealed about the resignation of the former president of ESPN.
John Skipper's cocaine dealer is going to rat him out.
What?
What?
He says he resigned because his drug dealer tried to extort him.
So he has to step down from ESPN right at the time that we're trying to make a TV deal.
One of the biggest moves of Dana's career came during COVID 2020. The world shuts down and everyone is stuck in their homes. Dana pivoted, created Fight Island, and was able to uphold his end of the deal with ESPN. The UFC produced 42 of the 43 agreed-upon fights. Pretty impressive, as the rest of the world was in solitary confinement. The sport exploded, as this was the only sporting event to watch and also the only thing people could bet on. The other sports are at a standstill, while the UFC fan base grew by 46%.
We gained a lot of fans because there was nothing to gamble on. So sports bettors started betting on UFC.
The UFC has now slotted itself as one of the top 4 sports in the United States. The big 4 of the NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL have had to slide over to make room for the UFC. Without White's relentless drive and tireless pursuit of excellence, the UFC would have never become the mighty empire it is today. His legacy stands as a testament to the power of unbridled hard work and the audacity to dream big. What is the next move for Dana? Does he continue to acquire all his competitors? Does he branch out of the lanes of fame? One thing is for sure.
If you are even fucking remotely a savage, you'll run these people over